Pinarello, why do you keep doing this? They've released a brand new Dogma F racing bike, and it looks exactly the same as the old one. It's a bit like when Apple drop a new iPhone every couple of years, and it's only a tiny bit better than the old one. But after 10 years of releasing a new one, you end up with a product which is significantly different, and the old one looks, well, old. That being said, the new Dogma has some subtle but decent improvements. We asked to borrow one for a video, and they said no. The only way we could get our hands on one was by going to Italy to the press event. So that's where we went. The spec we got to ride was a size 515 Dogma F frame set, allegedly 108 grams lighter than the previous Dogma, including seat post, bar, stem and fork. Princeton Peak 4550, wavy looking carbon wheels, Shimano Dura-Ace 12-speed, GP5000s, 28mm setup tubeless. So what has changed? They have upgraded the carbon layup to M40X for more lateral stiffness, changed the fork rake from 43mm to 47mm, hidden the threads for the through axles inside the carbon of the fork and frame so they're all smooth and invisible, slimmed down the head tube by 8mm for aero gains, slimmed down the down tube for more aero gains, beefed up the bottom bracket area, it's got a new oval steerer tube, the seat post clamp is now hidden inside, the talon bar is now 40 grams lighter, and there's loads of new sizing options right down to an effective 34cm at the hoods. Rejoice for smaller riders. And it has a slightly different angular shape at the inside of the head tube. I'll be honest, I don't think it looks as nice as the old model, but it is what it is. Price. Good news is they've priced it exactly the same as the old one. Bad news is it's still huge money at £5,500 for a frame set, and the builds start at £12,600. They only build these bikes up super high spec. That puts this bike firmly in our remortgage your house category.
Whilst we're in the car park of this fantastically expensive hotel, I'd like to give you an analogy about this bike. Come with me. So I've come to realise there's actually a different class of bike. I always thought it was high-end, mid-range, entry. And there actually isn't. There is a classification of bike above high-end, and it's like super luxury, I'm mega rich and into really fancy stuff category. I always thought a Pinarello was like a Rolex, but it actually isn't. It's actually more like a supercar. It's like a Ferrari or like an incredibly beautiful vintage £250,000 Porsche 911. It's not even high-end. It's higher than high-end. Having a Ferrari or this like incredibly expensive vintage beautiful car, it's, yes, they're lovely to have, but they come with all of the problems and sophisticated challenges like £1,000 tyres and engine rebuilds. Would you want to drive one of those cars to work? Would you want to take your kids to school? Would you want to go to the shops in one of those cars? You wouldn't. You want one of those cars when you're driving in the Dolomites with your partner, having a lovely time, the roof's down, the sun's lovely, it's not raining like it is right now, you're going through all the switchbacks, it's lovely, it's wonderful, it's perfection. But you don't want one for everyday life. Welcome to the Pinarello F.
Geometry and sizing. This is a long and low racing bike designed for professional bike races. It's going to be ridden by Team Ineos going forwards now it's been released, and it means the handlebars are very far away from you and very low down. So if you're not flexible, you might be best off with something else. Other more relaxed geometry bicycles in their range include the Dogma X and the X, which is extremely short and a real favourite amongst bike fitters. The increments and the range of sizes for a race bike are pretty good, but looking at the geometry table, it can get confusing.
The sizing is confusing, and I say that because all of the numbers that they use are not in line with what people are used to. It very much feels like the kind of bike that you're buying because you've been to a bike fit and the bike fitter sells Pinarello bikes. Like the handlebars are in 40, 42 and 44, but they can be used for 36, 34, 38. So how do you know which ones to pick? If you do have a bike fitter that is able to understand all of the geometry data, the chances are it's going to fit small people really, really well, and of course big people, but they always have easy bikes to fit. They're not the issue. They're not the challenge.
I had a chat with Bike Fit James and he loves these bikes. Not the race ones specifically, but Pinarello in general, because the sizing, there's so many different options, so the gaps in between the sizes are much smaller. So he actually fitted an Ineos rider not that long ago and changed his frame size by 2 sizes, which sounds insane, but it's not as crazy when you realise that the gaps in between the sizes are much smaller. They're still off the peg, but you're more likely to find almost the right size. Just make sure you choose the right bike. And it's probably the Pinarello X, not the Dogma. We asked bike fitter James Thomas his opinion, and he said they're notoriously good, especially in smaller sizes. As racing bikes go, they're one of the best fitting because of the variation. Oh yeah, and the new Talon handlebar has more sizes, which also gets my vote. It goes as narrow as 34 centimeters at the hood now, effectively making it suitable for women for once. For some perspective, I'm about 5'10", the 515 was perfect for me.
I'm about 170 centimeters. I used to be the same height as Francis, but for some reason he's growing. All of the Cade Media bikes, we ride the same size because it just works. We can kind of get away with it. For my own personal bikes, I like a really small bike. I fully appreciate that's not for everyone, but I do. One of the bikes at the event was a 465, which is smaller again than the ones we had. Definitely my preference. If I was going to ride that bike, that's the one I should be on. It means I don't have to slam the saddle forward, which is something I'm very used to doing, being on the smaller end of the bike size spectrum.
Wait. Now I'm going to caveat this by saying we weren't able to weigh the bikes on the day, so this is Pinarello's information. For a size 530 or 53 centimeter, with no pedals and no bottles, they claim 6.63 kilograms for the SRAM Red build with Princeton Peak 4550s, 6.77 kilograms for the Dura Ace 12-speed version with the same Princeton 4550s, and 6.88 kilograms for the Super Record wireless version with Bora WTO 45s. So you should probably ride it with pedals if you're going to enter a UCI race. Aesthetics. Pinarello are known for their striking, bendy tubing, wiggly lines, and bold paint jobs. And this bike is no exception. The new paint options are this bluey purple paint which changes when the light hits it, a black and orange with a chromy looking logo, a crisp white which you wouldn't want to ride in England, and a neon yellow and a cool grey. To be honest, the Pinarello tubing has grown on me, but maybe I've just been coerced by the fact that they fed us loads of lovely Italian food and put us in a fancy hotel. It won't be for everyone, but particularly in the solid colours like the blue, it's quite a nice looking bike. The finish was excellent, no bobbly paint or rough edges, as you'd expect from a product at this price. Bear in mind if you're watching this video early that some of the paint jobs won't be released as of today, some of them are going to come later in the year. Livability. Welcome to the section of the video where we take the bike apart as if we're going to put it in a box and see how much of a pain in the arse it is. Is livability a made up word, Jimmy?
They definitely don't want us to do this. But we're going to anyway. That is an incredibly designed seat post. Like really, really good. The seat post clamp is fully built into the carbon frame and it works really well. So it doesn't fall in, doesn't fall out, doesn't stick out. It just slots in and out. Actually, it's not. It's just sits within the frame. There's almost like a little bit of carbon that it sits on top of. So it is pretty snug, but it still does fall out. Bear that in mind if you're going to pack your bike for a flight, or buy some spares of these for when you inevitably lose it. It's cool how integrated, how like hidden it is. This is definitely falling apart. What is going on? I don't want to force it too hard because obviously they're out. Oh no, you would have to take it all off for a bike for a box, wouldn't you? They've just like squished that one. Oh, the stem's fallen apart. It's definitely complicated. This is what you hate about seat posts. You now have this problem with the stem. The steerer is oval shaped, which apparently they've done so that they can make sure that the cable routing goes up the front of the head tube to make the whole nose cone narrower. So ultimately, it now functions like all other bikes. No.
That looked pretty easy.
Yeah. Moist. The seat clamp is fantastic. The oval steerer tube means that the bars are always straight, which is definitely a plus. The clamp within the stem, though, not a massive fan of, so I think it's fair to say we're going to give this 9 out of 10. Well done, Pinarello.
So how does it ride? Well, it's hard to tell when you're in absolute Hollywood tarmac, switchbacks, in paradise. This is why we wanted one, so we could ride it in the northeast and do the pothole test.
This bike is rapid. It's just like... I don't want to say it, but I've never felt so much power transfer into a bike and come out the other side as I have in the last 2.5 minutes. It might be spectacular.
Handling was great, typical of Italian bikes. It's extremely stiff, it feels great accelerating, it corners beautifully. I'd be surprised if you really noticed the difference in fork rake. It's only 5mm, and perhaps if you were going from the old model and jumping straight on the new one, really you end up adapting quite quickly to that kind of change anyway.
This bike is phenomenal. It is a very, very good bike. We really wanted to put our own set of wheels on the bike. We did ask before we came out and they said no. I can see why, because they're very particular about what's done and what's not done. I would have preferred to be able to ride this bike with a set of our wheels so that we can tell more specifically whether it's these really expensive wheels, which are £3,000 to £4,000, or the frame, or a combination of both, which it presumably is. On the surface, it's an exceptional bike, as you would hope from what is presumably a very expensive bike. They haven't even told us the price yet. One problem, they've now made the top tube so narrow, it's really uncomfortable to sit on.
If you were going to ask me before we left what I was expecting of this bike, I would say it's going to be ugly as hell, but it rides fantastically. And I was right. Only joking. Well, partly joking. It obviously rides fantastically. It should. It's had decades worth of development with really clever people and engineers. It's going to be a fantastic bike. It is a fantastic bike. The surprise for me is that it actually isn't as ugly as I was expecting it to be. It's a great bike. Probably the best bike I've ever ridden.
Handlebars feel mint. This is a new version of the Talon, and now it goes down the smallest they've ever made them, which is amazing because small bike riders have been badly serviced for many years. So this goes all the way down to a 34 in between the shifters. That's not center to center, but because they're like flared, the tops of them flare in. So you stick the shifters on and the resultant place where your hands is about 34 centimeters, which is great. Obviously they have other sizes, so if you're bigger, you can run bigger sizes too. The only bit I'm not quite sure about is how skinny the drops feel. So this bit here, when you hold it, it's almost like sharp feeling. It's so narrow compared to any other handlebar that I've ridden. That is slender. Slender man.
I actually quite like the shape, and it ultimately means that the shifter, without any adjustments to the lever position, is actually really close to the bars. So normally, for me to get a good grip on the levers, I have to wind them in a long way. Whereas on these, they're not winding at all. I probably still would wind them in a little bit, but like just a tiny touch. So it just brings the shifter closer to the bar, which is a good thing. Again, for small hands, small people.
Just did a little sprint. To be fair to it, that does absolutely fly. It's really comfortable as well. However, we're testing it on this. There's no potholes. Take it to the Surrey Hills and we'll actually find out if it's comfortable or not. This is an issue with going to a press camp because they take you on the most beautiful roads in the middle of the mountains in perfect conditions, except for the fact it's about to rain. And you don't really get a feel for it, for what it's like riding through an industrial estate outside London. To conclude this video, now over to our brand new cool wall. Always wanted one of these. Where's the cool wall?
I've got some bad news, Francis. Only 1/6 of the cool wall arrived, so currently we don't have one. It's the uncool wall, maybe. So essentially, we are going to have a wall right here with sections, and we're going to put all of the stuff that we get into cool sections. That's such a bad script. If you've ever watched Top Gear, they had a cool wall where they put cars that they review on a cool wall. From cool to uncool. Well, we're going to have one as well. And it's not just going to be bikes, it'll be group sets, it'll be loads of stuff that we get here. We're going to get it up on the cool wall. The sections within the cool wall are going to be in the bin, meh, pretty good, proper good, want, and stolen from a very well-known watch YouTuber, God tier. So in terms of the Pinarello and where it will go on our wall, If you asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have said in the bin. What I have noticed with all these little increment changes over the years is that actually the big wavy woo-ness of it is less wavy woo. And for me, it is more attractive than it ever has been before. Obviously, performance-wise, it's unbelievable, but it comes with an astronomical price tag. Do I want one? Yes. Am I going to buy one? No. But does that mean it's uncool? Kind of, but it's still pretty cool. So for me, it's going in the want section of the wall, which might be by there. We are annoyed that we couldn't have it ourselves in the Northeast, partly because we wanted to put our own wheels on it to find out if the goodness of it was actually down to a very expensive set of wheels. We just don't know. It may be the case, it may not be the case. Next time, Pinarello, send it to us in the Northeast, please, and we promise we won't destroy it much.